afternoon and welcome to Armor of God Apologetics. I'm your host, Dr. Wayne Harsha. Sorry for the delay since the last time I put up a video, but I've been in the process of moving and hopefully you can tell actually upgrading kind of my YouTube studio here. First of all, my heart reaches out to all of those who have been suffering from the coronavirus, as well as the families of those who have passed from this terrible disease. And I pray that God would calm your heart, and I pray that you would reach out to God and get nearer to Him during this time, as many of us are not working. I still am, but many of us are not working at this point, and this is a wonderful time to reach out, to read the Bible, to pray more, and to come closer to God. Now, in our recent series, we've been going over the teleological argument for God's existence. This, again, is the argument that says that the universe and everything within it is so finely tuned that it could not have come by chance, that it had to have come from a designer. In much the same way that a building implies a builder, the universe, the creation implies a creator, and the teleological argument or argument from design is part of that. Now, as I stated in one of my previous videos, in my mind the teleological argument is actually a series of arguments, not just one. And in fact, in the last video we talked about how DNA and the complexity and language therein is simply too complex to have been put together through random chance. It just mathematically is essentially impossible. So today we're going to talk about the next step in that, and that is irreducible complexity. Now, before we talk too much about irreducible complexity, I just want you to watch this very short video clip on Neo-Darwinian evolution, just to remind yourself exactly how Neo-Darwinists and naturalists believe that we have come to exist in the form that we are currently.
Darwinian evolution. According to the modern version of Darwin's theory, known as Neo-Darwinism, even the most complicated biological features originated through a process of natural selection, sifting through random mutations or copying errors in the genetic instructions stored in DNA. For example, a random genetic mutation might give a particular bird a slightly longer beak. This small change could help the bird survive better, and eventually its offspring with longer beaks would come to dominate the population. A longer beak size might not seem all that important, but Darwinian theory asserts that over time, many similar unintended changes could accumulate, ultimately producing an organism radically different from its original ancestor. According to Neo-Darwinism, new species and new biological features do not develop according to an intelligent plan. Instead, they arose from the accumulation of thousands of small, undirected genetic mistakes over millions of...
So what exactly is irreducible complexity? Well, irreducible complexity is the concept that if you want to build a specific machine, all of the parts of the machine need to be present, fully functional in each of their components at the same time in order for that machine to work at all. In other words, if you took even a single piece of that machine out, it would not simply not work as well, but wouldn't work at all. Okay? Now, this is a concept that was first developed in 1996 by a biochemist by the name of Michael Behe. He was looking at several different complex systems within the cell and realized that there were just parts of it that did not make sense and did not fit with Neo-Darwinian evolution. He put out this information, and then since then we have found many instances and many examples of this in the scientific world. But what is an example of irreducible complexity? Well, we'll start with an example from the non-scientific world, and that is a mousetrap. Here's the concept. You've got basically 5 parts to the mousetrap. Although each of those parts could be used for something else, what we're talking about here is that in order to have a fully functioning mousetrap, you have to have all 5 parts of the mousetrap there, fully functional at the same time in order to make a functioning mousetrap. That doesn't mean a spring couldn't be used for something else. It means that in order for the mousetrap to work at all, it has to have that specific type of spring available and there in order for the person putting it together to put together a fully functional mousetrap. Okay? Now, the best example of this in the biological world is that of the bacterial flagellum. The bacterial flagellum is used by many bacteria, E. coli being one of them, in order to propel itself through a medium and get to a food source, like sugar. Now, you got to understand, at the time of Darwin, none of this was even close to their comprehension. To them, the cell was the lowest block of any building block, of any type of animal or plant. Beyond the cell, they had no concept of any of the inner workings. They had no concept of a nucleus or mitochondria or any of the other organelles within a cell. So therefore, that is why Behe called this Darwin's black box. However, obviously, over the last 150 years, we've had much improvement in terms of our understanding of cellular mechanisms. For a description of the bacterial flagellum, I want you to watch this short clip.
Flagellar motor is the one that Behe made most famous. It's a rotary engine that powers a whip-like tail, a protein tail that functions like a propeller, and it moves the bacterium through liquid, enabling the bacterium to essentially track down its food supply. And this little machine includes a rotor, a stator, a drive shaft, a U-joint, bushings, bearings, and a whip-like tail that functions like a propeller. And the machine in some bacterial systems turns at 100,000 RPMs in one direction and can reverse direction on a quarter of a turn and turn 100,000 RPM in the other.
I can already hear keyboards clacking away, saying that irreducible complexity has been debunked. First of all, that's simply a false statement. Okay? Some people even try to say that the bacterial flagellum has been debunked as an irreducibly complex system. First of all, I've read most of those, and I don't actually believe that, in fact, the bacterial flagellum has been debunked as an irreducibly complex system. Second of all, you've got to understand, it's not just the bacterial flagellum. In fact, on the screen here, you see a human eye. The human eye is an example of something that is irreducibly complex. If even a small portion of the eye is not functioning properly, the individual doesn't see. And while many people have tried to say that things like simple photoreceptors on lower life forms is an example of a stepping stone up to an eye, that is a huge reach that I simply do not believe is an example of debunking of irreducible complexity. The other thing is this, is that oftentimes what you'll hear from especially YouTube atheists is, oh, well, this example of irreducible complexity has been debunked, and therefore irreducible complexity has been debunked. The problem is that is just absolutely ludicrous in its reasoning, okay? Just because you debunk one example of irreducible complexity does not mean that you have debunked the entire concept of irreducible complexity. Here's what I mean by that. If you look at this diagram here, this is just one simple diagram or one portion of the overall diagram of the human metabolic pathway. This is actually what it looks more like. It is an extraordinarily complex system. And as we learn in medical school, if any one of those parts within, say, the Krebs cycle is not working properly, the entirety of the Krebs cycle then falls apart, and the human doesn't get the amount of ATP it needs produced out of the Krebs cycle in order to burn and produce energy. So you see, if you look at this diagram, each one of those steps and each one of those particular processes within the overall metabolic pathway, many of those are irreducibly complex pathway systems. So in order for someone to say that irreducible complexity has been debunked as an evidence for God's existence, they would have to debunk every aspect of irreducible complexity, and that is virtually impossible. Now, if you would like a little bit more information on this, I would like for you to get a copy of Darwin's Black Box by Michael Behe. It's an excellent read. Also, he's put out a second book now called Darwin Devolves. which is also an excellent book that has to do with the new science about DNA and the challenges that it presents for evolution. I hope you've enjoyed this video. The link to the full videos that I have had clips of in this one are down below in the description. If you enjoyed what you saw, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the like button if you like this video. Also, make sure to hit the bell so that you get alerted of anything that I post in the near future. Speaking of which, starting next Tuesday at 7 p.m., that's April 7th, 2020, at 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time, I will be starting a 8-part series on the evidence for God's existence, as well as the evidence for the death, deity, and resurrection of Jesus Christ that I am putting on for my home church, Victory Outreach Tacoma. Unfortunately, that can't be done in person, so I'm going to be doing it as a YouTube live stream. So make sure you tune in for that. You'll be able to ask questions, and hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions on the live stream. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and God bless.